And welcome to a very special edition of the One Hood Power Hour. We're very excited about the discussion that we're going to have tonight. As you know, I am your co-host, Kahari Mosley, joined by a special co-host, Dr. Cheryl Hall Russell from BW3, as well as the co-host of What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know is pinch hitting tonight. It still is baseball season. And so Cheryl is joining me tonight.
No, I'm not Miracle with just different hair. And I cannot do as good a job at this as she does, but I am happy to step in tonight and excited about talking to these candidates.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you, and had a great time earlier today talking about, how tonight is going to go. So this is the sixth of six candidate forums that we started in mid-September. This is the final one, featuring what we call the slate of 5 judicial candidates, 5 of the 8 candidates that One Hood Power endorsed, along with the Abolitionist Law Center and APA and Unite earlier in the springtime. So we're really excited to bring them back. It's almost coming full circle. And before I pass it over to Dr. Hall Russell to introduce our guest this evening, I did want to just give a couple housekeeping things that we do. Just reminding people that today is the voter registration deadline, tonight at 11:59 p.m. If you're registering online, this is the deadline to register to vote today. A week from tomorrow will be the deadline to apply for a vote by mail ballot. And as you know, Tuesday, November 2nd, is election day. And today we have 5 candidates running for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. And as we do, we try to give a short, brief breakdown of what these offices actually mean. And in the state of Pennsylvania, in the unified judicial system, as they call it in Pennsylvania, the Court of Common Pleas are the general trial courts in Pennsylvania. They're organized into 60 judicial districts. Most districts follow the geographic boundaries of counties, but 7 districts are comprised of 2 counties combined. Each district has from 1 to 93 judges and a president judge and a court administrator. So we have 5 candidates from, I believe, running for what is the 5th judicial district of Pennsylvania, which is Allegheny County. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to my esteemed guest host, Dr. Cheryl Hall Russell, to introduce our candidates and open up with the opening question for tonight's forum.
Yeah, the thing I love about this is, too often for years, we would go into the booth and we're looking at a list, this long with all these candidates. We were never quite sure. One thing I have to give it to One Hood Power about is there's been the ability to kind of break this down to real people and talk about really what these positions do. And so I am delighted to welcome our guest for tonight. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. I don't need to do that. We're going to have them come on individually. I'm going to ask them where they are currently serving and what are you most proud of professionally. Share that with our audience because we want them to know you like we do. So who wants to popcorn that off? Come on, who's spilling? You know what? I'm sure all of y'all sick of talking at this point. But yeah, tell us, where are you currently serving and what are you most proud of professionally?
I'll start. My name is Tiffany Sizemore, and I am an associate clinical law professor at Duquesne Law School. I started and continue to direct the youth advocacy clinic there, which is working on delinquency matters for young people and special education and school discipline matters all throughout Allegheny County. I am most proud actually professionally of that work. I left the Public Defender's Office Juvenile Division about 7 years ago because I wanted to change the way that we represent children in this county. And so I'm very proud of the clinic that we've built and created. I think that it is innovative. It has been responsive to young people's needs during the COVID crisis educationally. And so that is what I am most proud of. And I'm really happy to be here tonight with the four other women from the slate of 8. And we were all victorious on May 18th. And I'm incredibly proud of this group of women.
Terrific. A lot to be proud of. Who's next?
I can go next. Every time I hear Tiffany talk about her work, it gives me energy. So I think I'm ready to introduce myself. My name is Nicola Henry-Taylor, and I currently serve as the Director of Diversity of Duquesne University School of Law. But I also have a private practice where I focus on criminal law and family law. And that's not a common occurrence that a lawyer would have those two areas combined. But I learned how to be interdisciplinary when I was an assistant district attorney handling the mental health court. In that court, it was called a problem-solving court, and it truly is. It could be better, like getting rid of people having to plead guilty or be found guilty and be adjudicated and have felonies or misdemeanors on their record. But the work that it does is important because you have a special judge, you have specialized probation officers, you have a dedicated DA, a dedicated public defender, you have people from justice related services all working together for the good of the community, implementing restorative sanctions within the program and making sure that all of the needs, whether it be housing, mental health, Social Security benefits, all of those things are being addressed and looking at the person as a whole person. And so that's what I'm most proud of. And I use what I learned in mental health court in my practice now.
Fantastic. All right. I've got our addition. Now we are up to our full 5 now, which I'm excited about. All right, Chelsa, what do you want to add to this?
Sure. Thank you, Cheryl. So my name is Chelsa Wagner, and I want to say thank you to One Hood and all of the partner organizations for endorsing all of us, both in the primary and here now. So I serve as the Allegheny County Controller. I have been elected to 3 terms in that role. And prior to that, I was a state representative, also elected there for 3 terms. So a lot of the work that I'm most proud of has been in different ways of public advocacy. So if I look to the criminal justice system, I serve by virtue of being Allegheny County Controller on the Jail Oversight Board. And some of the measures that we've been able to accomplish there, it's a work in progress. There's still a lot of work to do, but to cite a few examples, making sure we got a private predatory healthcare provider out of the jail, making sure that we got juveniles in their own pod, and also making sure that we were able to get nonviolent pregnant female offenders out of the jail setting. So as I said, there's a lot of work to do, but specific to the criminal justice system, those are some of the things that I'm most proud of, but then also some of the larger public advocacy issues that I've been able to work on. And I would cite work to remove lead from our water in Pittsburgh, and also working to ensure that our residents continue to have access to our healthcare systems in light of what was the major tipping point for the battle between UPMC and Highmark.
You don't do much, do you? You just kind of.
I have a lot of good partners. It's not just me.
No, man, this is so exciting to hear the depth and breadth of the work that you guys do. Lisa, can you let us know too?
Okay, my name is Lisa Middleman. I'm a 34-year public defender here in Allegheny County. I'm proud that I was the first woman ever in the homicide unit. I currently try murder and death penalty cases for the PD's office. But the thing I think that I'm most proud of is running for district attorney in 2019 in order to, I guess, change the way the criminal legal system operates. And I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that I was able to I think engage people in conversations about criminal justice that had maybe never given it a lot of thought, or if they had, they didn't have anyone who could tell them, well, here's what the nitty gritty day-to-day aspect of a court case is. So I think that I am most proud that I was able to have a lot of conversations and maybe start some with some folks about the need for reform in our criminal legal system.
So critical. And let me do my round robin here. We've got Wrenna. How you doing? I'm glad to see you on the call.
Good evening, and God bless you all. Look at that beautiful smile on both you and Kahari. You all are beautiful. Thank you all.
We love
And
politics.
yeah, and the ladies that I'm on this ticket with, it's just a blessing. And I too want to thank you, One Hood, as well as all of the partner organizations for getting us through the primary, for really organizing and getting 5 of the women, is it 5 of us or 6 of us? 5 of us from the slate of 8 through to this point. And of course, we need your help to get through on November the 2nd, but it's an honor to be with these ladies. And I think that right now I serve as a mental health hearing officer. I have done that for 26 years, and I've been adjudicating cases in the minor judiciary for 26 years and heard over 50,000 cases. I'm certainly very proud of that. Additionally, I've represented a lot of families and persons in the community, but I, for many years, represented children in juvenile court. And I can't say that there's one aspect of what I have done that I love more than the other, because when I'm representing children and advocating for children, I absolutely love that. And some have come back, as I would tell them all, come back and knock on my door one day and tell me you're doing well. And I've had that happen. And there's you don't get a lot of, I think we all work in social service type areas, and we don't get a lot of satisfaction in doing what you do every day. So you kind of have to know how to get your own. But every once in a while, somebody comes and tells you what a phenomenal job and how much you help them in life. Those are proud moments. And sit on a bench, whether it's as a magistrate, whether it's as a mental health hearing officer, liquor control board, or even adjudicating zoning and planning hearings. I give people a chance to be heard. I listen to both sides of the case, and I treat people fairly. And I'm very proud of being able to provide a service to the public that they deserve, that they actually have a constitutional right to have. And so though in both settings, whether it's advocating or whether it's as an adjudicator, I take pride in what I do, and I've had many proud moments in that. Thank you.
Wow. I just hope folks are listening who may not have heard you before, and that they're tuning in tonight to learn just how much you're bringing. It's pretty amazing. So I won't hog this. Kahari, what do you have?
My first question was going to be about accessibility. It's something that's come up a lot, I'm sure, during your time out on the campaign trail. How do we make the courts more accessible? Kind of feeling like there's a disconnect between the court system and folks in the community. It's like the only time they hear from the courts or about the courts is if they're in a conflict with somebody or they're in some sort of tough situation. But what can we do to connect the courts? Because the courts do more than obviously just there when something goes wrong. So I guess maybe if we start in reverse order, what are some of the things that can be done going into next year to make the courts more connected to the community and more accessible?
Thank you. And can you all hear me?
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I can't hear you as well, so that's why I'm asking if you can hear me. Something changed on my phone, but I was trying to get in on my computer. But so to make the courts more accessible, I find in my travels and my practice on a maybe not a daily basis, but quite often, where members of the community would have a problem and would like to pursue it. And because they don't have the money to go pay an attorney, or the fees or whatever it takes to pursue whatever their problem is, they don't pursue it and they back down from it. And I know that in the family division, we make the family division accessible, the cases there, whether it's custody, divorce, support. And we have a whole system set up where you can, even PFAs, where you can come in and you can get help. You have legal clinics, and some of my colleagues on this show know exactly what we're talking about, because they are the supervisors of that and administrate that. And so those sort of systems where we have maybe legal law students and or pro bono lawyers that are willing to come in and sit with members of the community that don't have the money to be able to go hire an attorney or to pursue a case, that they can sit down and get help with pursuing some of these matters in a pro se fashion, or that we have, even more pro bono services that are accessible to people, because there are pro bono services out here, but they don't serve all of the matters that our clients have an interest in. And some of them have such strict income guidelines that people in the, lower end of the middle range are not they don't qualify. And so I think that we need to stretch that income guideline so that more people are able to qualify as well. Thank you.
I believe Chelsa's next.
Sorry, I forgot the order. Thank you. So I absolutely concur with Wrenna. And I think when you look at some of the judges across the different divisions do this well now, where they essentially run their chambers as sort of a clinic, because we have to recognize that so many of the litigants across all of the different divisions are pro se. And I think that has shifted quite a bit over the years. So one of the common misperceptions that I believe is out there is as if these courts are like a TV drama that people see on TV, when in reality, you have so many pro se litigants, people who are representing themselves. And I think, like Wrenna said, those are just the people who proceed in some action or have no option other than to proceed. So I think that's really important. But I think it also goes back to electing people who, like ourselves, who understand that this is a public system, that it doesn't belong to judges who sit behind a bench in robes, that it's funded by the public, and that though it is made up of 43 judges plus the senior judges, we are to serve the public. And the public, the taxpayers, this is their system and it needs to be responsive to them. And I would also say that to be able to have some more kind of forward-facing people, judges who are accessible to the community. A lot of people think, who are also in the know, that once you become a judge, you can't talk to people in the community. And that's really wrong. And I think all of us are committed to making that seem different, but then also understanding that within the courthouse, not just the judge, but every individual who the public interfaces with should understand where those people come from, should not have a sense of entitlement, but also know that these are the individuals that we are there to serve.
Thank you. Lisa?
So it's funny because one of the things that you learn when you're a candidate is that you have to follow the rules of judicial conduct, even though you're not a judge yet. You have to follow the rules even if you're just running. So all of us had to look up the rules to see what they said and to see what the actual canons of ethics were. And one was really interesting to me, which was ensuring the right to be heard. And it said basically the judge has to give everyone who has an interest in a proceeding the right to be heard. And it wasn't the right to file motions, the right to speak, the right to anything else. It was to be heard. And that phrasing really struck me because working in the criminal division, I think a lot of people don't get heard. the judges who sit on the bench don't always have an understanding of folks who are on the autism spectrum or have some other intellectual or developmental disability. People who struggle with addiction and mental health issues are frequently treated as if they are somehow obstreperous or trying to be obstructive to the process, rather than people who just have difficulty expressing themselves. So I'm really excited to try to partner with social work masters, candidates, I guess you would call them, as students in the master's programs at the University of Pittsburgh and Carlow University, to try to get externships for those people in courtrooms. Because I think if judges had access to people who were a little bit more knowledgeable maybe than they were about seeing and dealing with people who struggle with disabilities with which a judge is not necessarily familiar, it would be of great help to people actually being heard by the courts. I know that other folks have a lot of ideas about reducing the costs and fees so that folks do have better access to the courts. And I'll let them talk about that, because my great passion is making sure that people who struggle with disabilities and the forgotten people of Allegheny County actually have an opportunity to be treated with respect and dignity and have the chance to be heard by the judges.
Thank you. We'll go Nicola and then Tiffany to round out.
Well, I think you're going to hear a lot of the same reoccurring themes, because that's why I think we all get along so well, because we're really looking forward to making some changes. So one of the things that was talked about, but I'd want to also talk about, is civic engagement. There are groups like Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts who have judges like Judge Clark on there. Judge McPappas and I just did a civic engagement on what is the magistrate level, what is the Court of Common Pleas, what is Commonwealth Court, teaching the public what the systems are, because that's a huge disconnect when you don't even know what a pleading is, what each court does. So that's important. Also, I think that unfortunately in our country and in our county, money, resources is a huge obstacle to accessibility to the court. And one thing that I see in family division is there's a gap where there's a lot of funding for women in protection from abuse cases. There's free legal services. There's not that for fathers, and their parental rights can be affected. And so getting more grant funding to fill those gaps, to fill the gaps of a psychological evaluation or having a guardian ad litem appointed on a case, where people who have more money can get to the root cause of their cases. If you don't have those resources, you may not. And I know that there's work being done on that, but we could do more. A father or mother might miss out because they don't have money to pay for supervised visitation. Or sometimes there could be, as Lisa talked about, social workers teaming with attorneys. There is some grant funding and dependency court for that. I believe that her program will be phenomenal, but there are times where we may need some paid resources. We need to also train the court staff in making decisions that a lot of times people go to the courthouse, they may never see the judge. When you go to the PFA court or you go to support court, you may only see the domestic relations officer or a hearing officer. Similarly, that may happen in some other divisions where it may be an arbitration and you may never see an actual judge. We need to train every person that makes any decisions or interfaces with any citizen to be respectful and to not use implicit bias in any decisions. So, because it could be a traumatic experience to go to court. So if we have people who are trauma-informed, educated, and knowledgeable and respectful, I believe that we will have better results for our citizens when they go to court.
Thank you, Tiffany.
So in addition to what's been mentioned, I would just name a few things. I would like to see some clear signage in all of the courthouse buildings when you walk in that is available for the public, whether that's digital signage or just the old school like signs on stands that direct people where to go when they come into the courthouse. There is a strong I think lack of recognition about the trauma that some people face when they come into the courthouse. And so I would like to see signage for people who may not feel comfortable walking up to a deputy sheriff who may have a disability that prevents them from communicating with others. We have to realize that once people get through the metal detector, that has its own level of trauma for some people. And so I would like to see some clear signage about where to go. And depending on what you're here for, at the entrance of all of the facilities, city, county building, orphans court, criminal court, family court. I would like to see one thing that I think people don't really think about is that outside of criminal and juvenile, a lot of people come to court and they don't have lawyers for the matter that they're there for. So I would like to see all of our courthouse forms written at a grade level that is accessible to the greatest number of people, whether that be 4th grade or 5th grade reading level, so that people can feel like they're understanding the forms that they're filling out. And then finally, one thing again around trauma that I would like to see, and maybe this is too lofty of a goal, but certainly it's a personal goal for my courtroom, is that I would like to see courts start on time. It is very traumatic to sit in a courthouse all day waiting for important decisions to be made about your life, maybe waiting for just another court date. And when we say that we respect the community and that we want the community to have a different view of the courthouse, I think that starts with starting on time and to the greatest extent possible, staying on time.
Can I just interject and say maybe even having staggered start times? You know, everybody comes to court at 9 o'clock and your case may not be heard till 3. Why not have some people at 9, some at 10, some at 11? People lose work time. They pay for excessive childcare when they're all day and they don't have to be there all day.
It's horrible in juvenile court where Tiffany is. You could have a start time of noon and not get out of there until 7 at night, which is unacceptable. Sorry, because now it's such a good point.
And a lot of courts have actually started the staggered times since COVID to try to keep people spaced apart.
That's a great point. And so if we know COVID taught us we could do a lot of things well, so hopefully the courts remember that.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, what impact can you have on things like that, on changing times? Steph, you all feel this is a good idea. Do you, in your positions, should you be elected, are you able to make those changes?
You can certainly do what you want in your courtroom. You can have, there are judges in juvenile court who have staggered start times and who actually follow them, who take the time to think about the type of hearing that it is. So how much time should we allot to that hearing? It's not hard, especially if you're an experienced attorney or a judge with a lot of experience. These things aren't hard to do, but it's about, and I think maybe Chelsa or Lisa said, it's about the thoughtfulness of it, right? Mm. You have to care enough to do that. You have to care enough that you have to be cognizant of the fact that coming to court is traumatic. And I think one thing Kahari said at the beginning in the question is not everything that happens to the courthouse at the courthouse is bad. Some people are there to get married. Some people are there to adopt a child, right? And so we can be a better public service to people by doing small things that show a lot of respect and recognition of the space that we're in.
And if I may add, go ahead, Chelsa, go ahead.
I'll be brief, but to your question, Cheryl, I think of a lot of this as I did even in the legislature. I went in with a group when I was elected to the legislature. We turned the legislature over by 25%. And you think of critical mass, whether it's people who are thinking differently, whether it's women, whether it's finally having more Black judges being elected. So I think when you see more people adhering to different standards, there then becomes a pressure on the other judges, and especially with a commitment to transparency. So these are things that Tiffany running a courtroom on time all the time, that's something that I think is newsworthy. And for people to see and to understand that impact.
All right, Wrenna.
Go right ahead, Wrenna. Yeah, thank you. Again, I'm having a difficult time hearing you all. I apologize. So some of the things that have been talked about can be done immediately. Those things are, number one, listening to letting parties have their full and fair opportunity to be heard. Honestly, I've been doing that for 26 years. I've been urged by counsel. I've also been urged by other members of committees that I've sat on to, shut people down. Don't let them, you're letting them go on too long. But I really believe that you have a right to be heard. And how can you make a decision when you haven't heard both sides of the case? So they learned to, they learned a little patience working with me because I had control. So I allowed them to go on and I listened and before we all made a decision and certainly before I'm sitting a bench by myself. And I also with the time, we all have the ability to set the staggered times if we want to do that right away. And we certainly have to all go in and be fair. That's what we can do right away. We can be fair with our cases, and that's so important. We can treat people with respect, so important, but some of the other things, like setting up, like what I initially talked about, setting up some of these systems where people can come in and learn how to put their case together pro se with some help from law students, or those things take a little bit of time to get set up. So you can't do that, you can't walk in and start that on day one. The other things that we just talked about, you can do those from day one. It's up to you as a judge. Not only up to you, but it's imperative for you as a judge that you take those matters into hand.
I'm loving this. I mean, the words that are popping up: respect, access, equity, social support, understanding trauma. How are you as women? How do you think having this number of women then coming into the court, how's that going to impact how cases go, how the feel for the courts? Does it matter?
I'm going to say, I think Chelsa and Tiffany started this culture. That's the word I think we should use. The culture. I can remember being in the Allegheny County Courthouse as a young assistant DA and feeling like I could never, ever be a judge because the culture of the older male judges that were all white, and feeling that there are times where I was belittled as a lawyer, clients were belittled, victims were belittled, and mocked in open court on the record. If we come in there with the compassion and the respect that I know we will have, I think we can change the culture and make it unacceptable to behave that way.
I honestly think as women, and Wrenna and I are old enough to remember when a woman wore pants to federal court, a female attorney wore pants to federal court, and the judge just excoriated her for it. And I think we're all used to trying harder, right, in order to get things done. And Nicola touched on it. Older white men seem to get the pass, to accomplish things, to be heard, and women have to try a little harder and fight a little bit more. And so I think we've all experienced that, and we don't have any problem with it. So most of us don't want the job to be a judge. We want to do the work that comes with being a judge. And I think that's an important distinction. We didn't allow ourselves to dream of being judges. I know I didn't until recently, and it's doing the work, not being the thing.
That's really interesting. The motivation may be different. Anybody else want to comment about how do you think women will impact this, especially?
Well, I certainly would just add to what Lisa said, because I did not want to be a judge, even though my dad was one. He was the first elected Black judge in Allegheny County in 1965. We have to know our history. Homer S. Brown was the first judge to sit the Court of Common Pleas, his first Black. However, my dad was first elected. And so I did grow up believing that I could be a judge, but that I didn't want that. That was not my dream. It was my brother's dream, but that was not my dream as a child. However, when I did want to be a lawyer and I wanted to help people, that's what I wanted to do. And as Lisa indicated, when I entered the courtroom, multiple courtrooms as a female, I definitely found out that I was in a white male dominated industry, much like many other industries like medicine and things like that. They have been traditionally white male dominated, and it's different. And we're getting ready to make some changes. I mean, there's certainly been women judges and Black women judges, white women judges in Allegheny County, and they've made a difference, from the bench in their roles. And so we stand on their shoulders, and we got a lot of work to do.
And if I may add, one of the things that I always think in any elected office, but I think it's especially true in the courts where judges have so much power, they really do, once on the bench. So I've always believed that the best elected officials are ones who have had some life experience, who have been marginalized in some way or have had to overcome challenges. And you approach public office and you approach every profession differently. But by having that power, there's just so much opportunity for change for people who aren't going to sit aside because they've never sat aside. They've always had to speak up and fight for themselves. So they understand very differently the plights of the people who come before them.
And Chelsa, we've also saw when it goes wrong, when judges all come from the same background and they have never had a lived experience of the person in front of them and have no idea what it might be like to be from New Kensington or to be from McKeesport or some other area that they just never experienced. And those of us, all of us have had clients from many places throughout Western Pennsylvania and have dealt with people throughout the whole Commonwealth. And I think we have a better concept of understanding someone else's road and being very empathetic to it.
All right, man. We could go another 20 minutes just on this aspect of it. But Kari, what else do you have going on? Oh, can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Now, those were some really fantastic responses. One of my questions is about the campaign, like, because you all have come out on these issues. Have you seen the narrative, kind of change? Because, particularly over the years, I remember, I'm 45, I'm old enough to remember, like the tough on crime era and kind of, lock them up and throw away the key. Do you feel like having, such a cohesive unit? I think like solidarity was mentioned, I think before we went live. Do you think that's changed the conversation here locally and changed the tenor of the campaign and changed the issues that people have been talking about, on the trail, in a way of maybe if there was, 9 or 10 seats open 8, 10, 12 years ago?
Yeah, so I definitely think that it has. I think that we're in a space where even from the primary, right? One of the things that I used to talk about when we were in much larger forums on the primary is that people have been forced into this space of like, it's not appropriate for you to be talking about lock them up and throw away the key, right? We are in a new day where people have to confront the reality that mass incarceration is a failed experiment that has wiped away essentially a generation or more of Black men and boys, and more in more recent decades, Black girls and women, and that there has to be a change because this is not sustainable. I think last summer, when our country felt sort of on the brink, again, reiterated the fact that we cannot continue business as usual. It's not okay. And that changes have to be made both incrementally or on a micro level and at a macro level. That there has to be hands at the table, voices at the table at every level of the criminal legal system and the juvenile legal system. And people engage with us about these issues on the campaign trail, whether we are just at a small little Democratic committee picnic or whether we're at a larger forum. I feel like it's not a conversation that's only happening in Black communities. It's not a conversation that's only happening amongst affected families, but it's a conversation that's happening on a much broader level. And it's critical now that we put action and work behind what we know has to change. And we have that opportunity in about 2.5 weeks or so to do that. So I hope that we follow through and that we, as a county, and finish what we started on May 18th.
And
From a
if I may
criminal
add-
perspective, oh, I'm sorry. Did someone else? Were you still talking?
No, that's all right. You go right
So
ahead.
I was going to say, from a criminal court perspective, you know, crime is wrong, and we do have to protect our communities. And so we're not going to take a shift from which what Katari talked about, you know, getting rid of crime, punishing crime, and take that total shift over to let everybody go. No, that's unrealistic also. Now what I think we find more, and I hear in each one of my colleagues talk about persons with mental illness, persons with drug and alcohol problems, persons that need counseling for abuse, and those type of matters. And I'm sure I haven't named them all, that sometimes people need treatment, and they don't need to go to jail and languish in jail. They need to get treatment, whether it's for mental health, whether it's for drug and alcohol, whether it's for domestic violence. And some of them need parenting skills, you know, and it's unreal how many young people I find have never been taught how to manage their lives, how to budget, how to take care of their children, because they didn't have anybody teach them that. And so, you know, we have to partner with various agencies and organizations that are able to provide those sort of counseling and training and skills. And so sometimes people will be appropriate to divert them from, say, going to jail, and you can suspend a sentence, you know, and say, hey, you know what, if you'll go get assessed and get the treatment, follow the treatment plan, whatever it is, whether it's, again, mental health, drug and alcohol, or whatever it is, and then come back, show your certificate, and you know, we can then withdraw your case or do it as a disorderly conduct. But if you don't do it, then, you know, hey, you've already pled guilty. And you know, so that helps people get treatment and get the help that they need sometimes. As a mental health hearing officer, because I've been that for 26 years, when I was a magistrate, I could recognize mental illness in somebody. Not all the time. I'm not a psychiatrist, but there are times when you look and say, "Ooh, this person has mental illness," you know, and so I could divert the case. And we do have mental health court, which Lisa and Tiffany and others are very familiar with. We have drug and alcohol court within our criminal division. But believe you me, there are folks that fall between the cracks and are not brought up in those courts. So you have to do something about it in your own courtroom. And so, yes, I think that we have the opportunity to make those sort of changes. And we're not going from one end of the spectrum all the way over to the other, but there are things that we can do. And I think that we are all talking about those things and equipped to make those sort of changes in our own courtrooms.
If I may add, just to Kahari's question on how much other candidates are committed to this. All of us are running alongside the other 5 candidates on the Democratic ticket. So we've been asking everybody to please support not just us, but all 10 of the Democrats, and then also the 4 Democratic candidates running statewide. And I can say that I think all of us would agree that we know that those candidates are also committed to these reforms wholeheartedly. And so for us as a group of people running for office, electing those individuals are also really critical to ensuring the success of the reforms and the culture shifts that we're talking about.
Can I just add to that? I think that people are starting to recognize that, you know, we've been sold a bill of goods. We've been sold this notion that safety, public safety, is contingent upon locking everybody up, you know, and the people that sold us on that, a lot of them were prosecutors. And that's why so many of the judges that you see in the courts went from the DA's office to the bench. And so you ended up with prosecutors arguing to former prosecutors to lock people up. And we've been doing that for a very long time. And instead of solving the problem, we've created even greater problems. We've taken people out of families, leaving them without mothers and fathers and siblings and support systems. So I think that this kind of ties back to what I believe Nicola and Chelsa and Tiffany and Wrenna were also saying about community and staying in the community. The people that are running for judge now, the people that have gotten the nomination, are people who understand the interplay between communities and schools and courts and systems that support people. So if you put yourself, once you're elected, on the bench and you put blinders on and you don't go back to the communities that you're familiar with or back to the communities that are most affected, you're not going to be a good judge. A good judge is one that understands the effects that their judgment has, not only the people that are standing in front of them, but on their families and on the communities that support those families. So I think that's a crucial component to all these ladies that I honestly get a little teary sometimes when I hear them talk, because I think about the future of the courts with these folks on the bench. And like, I have so much hope, and it really does. I mean, it's a really amazing feeling.
Wow. And we have to follow the dollar. Listen to what Lisa said. If you follow the dollar and you look at the fact that the corrections system is the largest and fastest growing industry in Pennsylvania as well as across the country. And it's not going to work, and it's not going to continue to grow unless we continue to put people in jail. So follow the dollar. And that's where a major part of the problem comes, is that we have this institution.
Right. So
and not that we don't have to have corrections, because we do, but not in the ways. I mean, as Lisa said, the DAs are putting people, that's their job. Put them in jail, put them in jail, put them in jail. It doesn't take into account, what the needs of the people are in the community.
So Nicola, may I add to this for a minute, Wrenna? So to Kohari's question, and I think I loved everything everyone says, but I agree that the conversation did change. There are so many progressives after George Floyd that wanted to understand what's happening. They may have never known that there's so much systemic bias from whoever gets pulled over to who ends up getting a probation violation, whose child gets removed from their home when Children and Youth Services gets involved. And they wanted to hear, and they wanted to support us, and they went out, they knocked doors. They're still giving us all their resources, which is amazing. And so that's a positive part of the change in the conversation. But what I want us to also focus on is it is not over. The five of us did not win yet. There are people running as Republicans who are touting law and order. They are putting on their Facebook pages that they're supported by the Fraternal Order of Police. I'm married to a retired prison guard. I believe in law enforcement, but I also don't believe in these dog whistles. And we know that happens. And so that concerns me. And I think that all of the candidates, the 14 that Chelsa reminds us of routinely, that all of us will, even though some of us are former prosecutors, we understand the dynamic of balance, of restorative sanctions, making our community whole, not only putting people in jail. So let's just be mindful that there are still people. We're not just talking 10, 20 years ago. There are people today who in Allegheny County running for judge who do not want to see what we will bring.
Truth. Chelsa, you were going to say something, or?
No, I think Nicola covered it all there. I agree. I was thinking when Wrenna was talking of just some of the misnomers that we hear. So when we call it the Department of Corrections, it hasn't operated in a corrective fashion. So to the language of restorative justice and how we really just need to shift the focus.
Yeah, if we call it what it actually does, it wouldn't be nice. Speaking of a name, Court of Common Pleas. I mean, it is, we hear it. People don't necessarily understand what that is. And so I'm curious, what is it the public doesn't know about what the Court of Common Pleas does?
Oh, Nicola, you should talk about housing court.
Housing court. I don't do a lot in housing court, but I think what the Court of Common Pleas does is what people don't realize. So I think in the beginning, Kohari talked about the fact that there are different ways that all the counties and the all of the divisions do things. So in Allegheny County, we have 4 divisions. In a small county like Clarion, they have one judge who hears everything. We break it up into orphans court, civil court, criminal court, and family division. And so within those divisions, there are several judges that are broken up. And in housing court is an important program that Lisa talked about in the civil division. Those type of problem solving things, like in civil, the name change project, when we were going through the economic downturn, looking at mortgages, in family division, having generations, which deals with the custody cases, and having a protection from abuse unit, having these specialized groups within each court, each of these divisions helps to make sure that we are addressing problems. Obviously, we don't have all the solutions. One thing that the candidates have talked about is in civil division, sometimes general docket cases go around to different judges, as opposed to in family division, we have one family, one judge, which I'm sure Tiffany can speak to because it works really well with a family that may have a juvenile court involvement, but also may have a custody matter or divorce matter. And so you're not going back and forth between judges. And I'll stop there because we could really talk about all of this all night.
I would just, I put a link there if you all can see it. So the Unified Judicial System for Pennsylvania has some very helpful stats on the cases that are adjudicated across all of the divisions. So the most recent stats are from 2019, which is probably a good metric because it was before the pandemic hit us. So it's probably a more kind of typical year. But what you see there, among other things, are, I mentioned earlier, how few of the matters are in trials period, how very, very few, less than even 1% are in jury trials. So I hear this commonly. I think of what Nicola was talking about before, that we're all still running. And when you hear some of the rhetoric from some of our opponents on the other side, they would like to make the public believe, some of them, that, this is the, old system of years ago. And it's really, really not. And I've always believed that statistics are important because they shouldn't be partisan. I know we live, unfortunately, in a different era where people debate now what are facts and what are not. But I think that's really interesting. And another thing you can look at on this website is how few of our cases actually go through our problem-solving courts. And that was something Nicola also mentioned earlier in terms of, yes, they are great programs, but there are still challenges with those in terms of having to enter a plea in order to get into those programs. And all throughout the campaign, I think a lot of people have pointed to those correctly as some of the positives in our court system, but we have to recognize how very few people are afforded that opportunity.
Wow.
I think one thing I would want people to know, not necessarily about this division or that division, but that with very few exceptions, your courts are public spaces. You can go in and you can watch court in the civil division, in the criminal division, and there's very few hearings that are just not open to the public. And I think that one of the things that I don't love sometimes in criminal division is that frequently when you walk into courtrooms, it's like, who are you? Why are you here? And, what's your case? And listen, these are public spaces. You are allowed to just go in and observe the people that you elected and see how they're doing their job. And I know ALC has a great court watch program, but just as a citizen, when I used to practice in DC, we had people who came to just watch trials because they thought trials were interesting, right? And so they would be there to just court watch. And so I want to encourage people to go in and see what's going on when you have time, if you have time, and once we're back to normal, whatever normal will be after COVID.
Normal is.
They can do that virtually
to go watch some court, right? I think that it's really helpful, and I think that it helps people to be sort of demystify some of the process. It doesn't have to be as overwhelming as sometimes it feels.
I was going to say, they can watch virtually as well. I believe the Abolitionist Law Center, didn't they sue Judge someone in order to be able to have access as they should to see hearings?
Absolutely.
You know what? I love that Tiffany used the word demystify, because I think that's what we really need to do. You know, this whole black robe and sit up higher than everybody else so that, you know, it's all a super secret thing that only the judge can understand is nonsensical. You know, there are good judges, and there are judges in the family division that get off the bench and they come down and they sit at tables and talk to children, because that's a much better and more effective way to communicate with people. And we had a judge resign last year or 2 years ago, who did not have any idea of how to speak to the people that came before him. So it doesn't have to be a mystery, and you don't have to keep people in ignorance about why you make any particular decision. Why should a judge, particularly in a high profile case, not have to give their findings of fact and conclusions of law? Don't we work for the people of Allegheny County if we're a judge? So here are the facts that I found to be the credible facts, and here is the law that I applied, and here's how the law affected the facts, and that's why I came up with my decision. When did we decide judges don't have to explain themselves? You know,
Wow.
So I love that word, Tiffany, demystify.
People will feel better leaving the courthouse having known you listened to them, and that you, regardless of what the answer is. I just had Judge Harnack sentence my client to 7 years in the federal penitentiary, but I thanked him at the end because he, for about 2 hours, listened to everything, every piece of evidence, he looked at everything we submitted, and then he respectfully listened to my client and explained everything. And what Lisa is describing is what should happen. Even in family division, I've had Judge Bush, before we leave the courtroom, say, you will get an order, but here's what I heard. This is the evidence that I took into account. These are the factors, and this is why I'm going to decide this way. And that is powerful. I feel good even when I get a bad result, leaving with that.
Yeah. But so incredibly important. I mean, what you're doing tonight is incredibly important. It's giving a face to the law. I mean, it is this big black kind of, oh my God, we've got to go in. I don't know what's going to happen. Who are the people there, you know, and not without reason. I mean, looking at the number of folks who are going to jail, especially those who look like me, it is a very intimidating place. And so, you know, I'm so appreciative of you sharing your philosophies. And yeah, Rena, I see you wanted to say something really quickly. Oh, we can't hear you. You're on mute. Uh-oh. You're on mute.
Rena, can you hear us? You're on mute.
I don't think she can. Oh, there she goes.
She is.
Okay, you got to start again.
Now, I think you muted it by accident again. Yeah, Rena, we still can't hear you. I think you hit the mute button twice.
Right there.
There
Stop.
you go. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, sorry. I think that many persons in the public are aware in both in the criminal system as well as in the juvenile system that there is an opportunity for a first-time offender to have their case handled in a manner in which they will end up with an expunged record at the end. And in the criminal system, it's called the ARD system, and in the juvenile system, it's called consent decree. And they're both good programs, and they allow, like I said, a first-time offender to end up with an expunged record. They both require a term of probation with some conditions that have to be met, which might be maybe some fine, restitution, maybe some community service, maybe some treatment. Those things are more case specific on a case-by-case basis. But the one thing that I think that, and this is what people don't know, is that with each of those systems, the person who has been aggrieved, the victim, has to agree to allow this defendant to go into this program. And I don't think that's right, because some victims are just so hell-bent on getting revenge that they don't care to have someone have an opportunity. And in some person's lives, especially if it's a young person or if it's a child, this expungement allows them to have a clean record and start over. And in fact, and the idea of it, the goal of it is to, get this behind you and become a productive citizen and not get in trouble again. And this actually will work in many persons' lives. But if the victim doesn't allow it, then you end up with the stigma on your record of having a record. And I think that we should change that, and that this should be whether you qualify or not should be left in the hands of the judge. I think that's why we have judges. We should have the ability to make that decision if someone qualifies to get in that program, not that it's left in the hands of the victim. And that's certainly a judge who has listened to why the victim thinks they shouldn't be in it, so that you're listening to both sides before you make that decision. But I think a judge is qualified to make that decision.
All right. So, Kahari, you want to wrap it up? I know we're looking at 8 o'clock now.
Yeah, first I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening and participating in such an enlightening conversation. And we started this tradition with Miracle asking this question in the spirit again of humanizing. Folks always say that particularly at this point in the political season, it's very interesting. I mean, it's very oftentimes rather it is interesting, but oftentimes we see human beings get reduced to caricatures at this point in the political season. So we always want to take an opportunity to kind of reconnect with the humanity. So maybe because I know on always call it the Hollywood Squares with the Zoom StreamYard screen. So maybe we go Nicola, Chelsa, Tiffany, Lisa, then Wrenna. But the question that we always ask to kind of lighten the flavor before we leave is what brings you joy? To talk about, so we get, again, in the spirit of getting to know these candidates beyond the talking points, beyond the websites and the Facebook pages, and the press releases, what brings you joy? So we'll go Nicola, Chelsa, Tiffany, Lisa, then Wrenna.
What brings me joy and keeps me really busy, the candidates will attest to this, because I always run home to make sure that on Saturdays it's my turn to cook. So I have 2 teenage children, a husband, and a golden retriever who's absolutely beautiful, Max. And my family means a lot to me and it brings me joy. But, like everybody else, teenagers keep you busy. So that's it for me.
And I think I'd answer the same. My better half, Kahari, mostly. And our 2 sons. I mean, it's, to me, always the most important thing. And as an elected official, I've always said, that's what makes me a better elected official. My first priority is always going to be my family.
I think for me, what's bringing me joy right now is my goddaughter, Savannah. We went to the pumpkin patch yesterday. She is 2.5 and she is all nose and temper tantrums. And she is really just living out my internal spirit every day right now. So I'm grateful for her. So that's my joy right now.
Okay, I'm going to break from the mold and I'm going to say, so when I bought my house, it was in very bad shape. I was just divorced. It had like a red tagged furnace and some triple shag carpet. I mean, I had some serious problems going on here. And I needed to get rid of the carpet and I bought bamboo, which was very cheap. It was like $1.29 a square foot. And when I asked them how much it would cost to lay the floor, they told me $4 a square foot. And I said, I'm not paying $4 a square foot to lay this garbage $1.29 floor. So I watched some YouTube videos and I bought saws. And so what really has given me joy over the last 20 years that I've lived in this house is taking something that was in much need of help and physically working on it to make it something that I'm really proud of, and it was able to raise my children in and show them the value of hard work and investing in the future. So looking around this little house now gives me joy.
Love. All right. Wrenna, she had a chance
Awesome.
to share.
So
Oh no. Hope she can come back. I don't know. That looks like a death ring, guys.
Yeah.
You're right. You called it.
Oh man, what a wonderful way to wrap up. Big smiles on faces. Really, that was a very centering question, because that's who you are when you go to the court. The things that bring you joy also sustain you. I know when you're sitting there and you're making hard decisions, because everybody in front of you is trying to find a joy space too, right? That's a part of living. So man, I could not appreciate more having you guys come on and talk about. So this stuff is heavy, but you make it bite-sized and understandable. And I know for me, and I know, Kahari, you do this all the time, but I don't. And it really was very, very useful to me to get a better understanding of what it is you'll be doing when you are elected, because people are going to show up and make sure that happens.
Brenna might be back.
Our last moment of joy with Wrenna Watson. You're back. Yay. Can she hear us?
Yeah, Wrenna, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you see
Yeah.
me or hear me?
Yeah, we can see and hear you. Yeah, we were patiently waiting to hear what brings you joy. So we're glad that you're back to tell us all about it.
I'm sorry. I don't know. This is technology. It's just, I didn't touch it. It just shut off all by itself. Professionally, I told you earlier that what would bring me joy would be someone coming and telling me what a great job I did for them and how well they are doing in their life. Over this whole election period, I've been around and gotten to see so many people all over Allegheny County, and it's almost overwhelming with the number of people that have come to me and told me something that I did for them or how I helped them over, and the conviction and the dedication with which I did that. I don't think of those things, and I don't know that I'm doing that. I just liked helping people, and I do it every day. And so that has brought me a lot of joy during this campaign period in ways that I never expected. And like everyone else, my family is what brings me joy. I have a daughter, Michelle Roberta, who is now with.
So on that note,
I think she was telling us, I know Wrenna is very excited that her daughter's expecting. So
Yes.
Wrenna's planning on becoming a grandmother. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I want to thank Nicola Henry-Taylor, Tiffany Sizemore, Lisa Middleman, Renae Watson, and of course, full disclosure, as many know, my wife, Chelsa Wagner, for joining us, and also Dr. Shohal Russell for stepping in and helping out with Miracle Joes and helping facilitate a wonderful conversation. So the best of luck to all of you, and looking forward to continuing to have conversations. Hopefully everyone will be victorious and maybe part of that community engagement process is, we can continue these conversations in another vein, hopefully if you make it to the other side as officers of the court and, continue this engagement, because that is one group of elected officials that obviously can't be involved in politics, but can be involved, in civic life and being involved in community, engagement. So hopefully we can continue these lines of communication, obviously not during campaign season, but, as actual officers of the court. So thank you so much. We're so glad to have you. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you
for doing
Thanks
this.
for the conversation, and always good to see the others.
Thank you. And thank you to Wrenna Watson as well.
Wishing you luck. Vote, everybody.
Everybody, yeah, absolutely. Everybody vote. So just a couple quick announcements. This Friday, we are having an event with Moms Rising and U.S. Senator Bob Casey. It's going to be at Shinley Plaza in Oakland. It's going to start at 11 a.m. and the event is called Lifting Up Caregivers, about the urgent need to invest in caregivers as we build back better from the pandemic. And our special guest will be U.S. Senator Bob Casey. We're very excited. So everybody come out, check out the event. It is on our Facebook page now, and you'll be hearing more information about that in the coming days as we get to Friday. So again, it'll be this Friday at 11 a.m. at Shinley Plaza. So again, I want to thank all 5 candidates for joining us this evening. Nicola Henry-Taylor. I want to thank Wrenna Watson. I want to thank Tiffany Sizemore. I want to thank Lisa Middleman. And of course, my wife, Chelsa Wagner, for joining us. And thank you. Dr. Russell, do you have any final words before we adjourn for the evening? You're on mute. You're on mute, Cheryl.
Just wanted to encourage people to pass this video around to make sure, to help educate and to help inspire people to go and vote. Because I think there was a lot of great information in here. And you get to know these folks as real people. And I think it's really, really critical.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And as you can see on the scroll at the bottom of the screen, if you are not registered to vote, you have until 11:59 p.m. tonight to register online. You can go to the Department of State's website. You can also, we had dropped earlier in the comments, our online voter guide. You can actually go through that portal as well on onehoodpower.org. If you go to resources and click on the link ballot ready, it will take you to our online voter guide, which will allow you to check your registration status. And if you need to register to vote, it will take you directly to the state site. October 26th is the deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot. And Tuesday, November 2nd is the big day, which could be a very, very historic day in Western Pennsylvania. If folks come out and participate in the process, like folks did in the primary, the whole city government as well as the county courts could be transformed in a way we have never seen in the history of Western Pennsylvania. So it's a very, very exciting time.
All right.
All right, so everyone, thanks so much. Thank you, Cheryl. Join us again next Monday night for a pre-election special. We're going to be doing 2 pre-election specials. Next week, we're going to be focusing on local races. And then the following Monday, the night before the election, election eve, we'll be talking about the statewide races. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for our guests. And thank you, Dr. Russell, for coming in the clutch.
It's a pleasure. All right. You get the real deal coming back next week with Miracle. All right. You take care. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Yep. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.